So this is our capability that we built for our information retrieval class. So Sandeep and Randy gathered close to 10 million tweets, which you can see are stored here in Apache Solr. This is a lot of information. One of the biggest challenges with working with tweets is that people provide very limited information into queries, and the tweets themselves are very limited in the amount of unstructured text that are contained in the microblogs themselves. So one of the big challenges that we found as we did research in the literature was how to process and expand the queries to be able to improve the relevance of the information that was returned. So we did a lot of work in taking queries that were provided by users through our user interface and expanding them to be able to improve the precision, the expected precision that we got on returns. So I'm going to just walk you through a Python notebook to show a little bit about what kinds of query processing we do in the background so that people can understand if we have a query like Ben Carson, an American flag, and then the user also says that they'd like to expand that query centered about a Twitter user, Rick Santorum, who was actually another candidate, a competitor of Ben Carson's during the campaign. And we can take that query. This is information about how to allows Python to hit the Twitter API to pull information about Rick Santorum and his network. These are boosting factors that we use to weight different parts of the query to try to improve relevance of the returns. These are just some helper functions that help to provide expansion of that query. One of the most important things that we do is we take entities from the presidential campaign and then we expand those so that they are treated as phrases and also hashtags so that if someone types in a phrase like glass ceiling or a hashtag glass ceiling, that we do a search on both the exact phrase glass ceiling and the hashtag value glass ceiling. That also allows us to do things like do searches for Elizabeth Warren and Senator Warren and then all the hashtags associated with those. So that's one way that we can actually do a lot to improve the quality of the responsiveness of Solr to these limited queries that people are providing. So here's an example of how that query that we typed in for Ben Carson and American flag is expanded in terms of entities. We also add weighting to increase the probability that highly retweeted or favorited queries are among the top results. So we give bigger weighting to those. This is a part of the expansion for that reweighting centered around Rick Santorum. So these are, it went out and hit the Twitter API and got information about Rick Santorum's network. And then this combines all of that query information into a single call that we can make against Solr. And so if we make that call against Apache Solr, against our 10 million tweets, then we can get a set of responses that come back very quickly. And so you can see that the results we're getting involve American flag, Ben Carson. So what I'd like to do now is to move to our actual user interface and show you what this looks like a little bit for some basic searches. So if we were to type in something like election winner and run a query against that, then we get results that make a certain amount of sense. They involve the word election. This is a very highly retweeted tweet from that was a retweet of Bernie Sanders, and so this is the top of our result, where you can see who's going to be the winner of the election. Again, it's actually got quite a few retweets, and then this is actually the same tweet again, but from another user. So this is one of the challenges here that may affect the quality of what's what's being provided. But again, here, election winner. As you go further down, you find that the number of favorites and retweets is less. So let's look at another example. If we type in Secretary Clinton, so we know that that's Hillary Clinton, but in this case you see that actually our system is smart enough to understand that, so that tweets that involve Secretary Clinton and are directed at Hillary Clinton are more relevant and show up closer to the top of the feed. So you have here Hillary Clinton and Secretary Clinton. Here you have Secretary Clinton and President Clinton, and then good luck Secretary Clinton. So you can see it's finding things that involve other versions of that entity name. Let's look at something else here. So we had quite a few Spanish language tweets in our database. So let's look at something that's in Spanish language. So we'll put in Latinos para Trump, and then we can do a search and indicate that we're interested in searching in Spanish language. If we do that, we find that we get tweets returned that involve Latinos and para and Trump. And these are Spanish language tweets. But what's interesting about this case actually is that there was actually a campaign sign, Latinos para Trump, that was intended to mean Latinos for Trump. And the word para does mean for, but unfortunately it's the wrong Spanish word for in this case. It should have been Latinos por Trump. So if we do a search here, Latinos para Trump in English, we actually get a different set of tweets. And these are tweets that are talking about how it's embarrassing to see non-Latinos waving Latinos para Trump signs when it should read Latinos por Trump. So you can see that in this instance, even though we're putting in Spanish language, running that search against English provides some interesting results. So now let's do a search that involves using a Twitter username. So I'll put in Senator Cruz. This is Ted Cruz. I'll also put in Ronald Reagan, which is another common entity associated with this election database. And again, I'll do this search centered on Rick Santorum, who is another Republican candidate for president. And if we run this search, we see that we get things like repeated instances of Ronald Reagan as being the highest rated tweet. Here's one that's from Rick Santorum, as we asked to be centered on Rick Santorum. Here we have Senator Cruz, so it understood that this was Senator Cruz comparing Senator Cruz to Ronald Reagan in an unfavorable way, which really shouldn't be surprising since we asked for the results to be centered around a competitor of Ted Cruz. So that's interesting. So next, let's look at, let's get rid of this centering, and let's go back to looking at Democrats. In this case, let's put in HRC, which is Hillary Clinton's initials, and we'll put in debate. In this case, we'll add a hashtag. We'll use Black Lives Matter, which is a hashtag that's generally associated with Democrats. Blue Lives Matter would be the Republican response to that, talking about police officers. This is talking about police unfairness or brutality. So we'll do a search, HRC debate, and we'll add this hashtag to enrich that query. So by providing a list of hashtags that are common in the database, then that means the user doesn't have to know what those hashtags are a priori. So we can run this search, and we can see that the search tool understands not only that HRC is Hillary Clinton, so it's finding instances of Hillary Clinton in the results, Hillary Clinton, but it also understands that this Black Lives hashtag is actually also a phrase, Black Lives Matter. So it's finding Black Lives Matter tweets as well as those that have the hashtag Black Lives Matter. So let's do something else that's interesting. So we said that Black Lives Matter was generally associated with Democrats. Let's look at searching for Donald Trump and Black Lives Matter. In this case, if we run this search, we find that the first tweet has an enormous number of retweets, and it says Donald Trump, but there's nothing associated with Black Lives Matter with it. The second tweet has an enormous number of retweets, and it has something to do with Black Lives Matter, but it doesn't have anything to do with Donald Trump. So this is the kind of problem that you run into when you're asking for things that are not strongly related to one another. You can get results that are sort of not in agreement. When you do start getting things that say things about Trump and Black Lives Matter, the retweet count tends to be much lower. So that's just an example of the challenges that actually exist within the data, but the tool itself is trying to provide the best response that it can. So this gives you some sense of how we've worked to try to improve the relevance of retrieval in a difficult information retrieval environment where you have microblog text. And we do that by enriching the query using both information that is based on the sort of organic information that's in the 2016 election, and then also allowing the user to make some specific directives to center the results about a particular point in the Twitter network. So this is our tool.